In this video, I'm going to show you how to replace the bearings in the front and rear hubs on a Slash 4x4. First step, I'm going to remove this nut retaining the steering linkage in the front. I'm just going to use my Traxxas 4-way wrench to go ahead and remove this nut. We're going to go ahead and put that to the side, pull the link off. Next, I'm going to remove the bolt retaining the upper camber link. And then I'm going to go ahead and remove the hinge pin. Now my hub carrier is going to be free. Just go ahead and pull it straight out and just remove it from the vehicle. Next up, we're going to go ahead and remove the hex from the axle. I'm just going to use a flathead screwdriver and just go ahead and pry the hex off. Pull it off. We're going to remove the pin from the axle. And we're going to go ahead and slide the axle out of the assembly. Now there is a shim here. If you partially slide the axle out and push it back in, the shim will actually slide out far enough that you can pull it right off the axle. And then we're going to go ahead and pull the axle out of the assembly. Looks like the bearing came out. Go ahead and just use one of your wrenches to press the bearings out of the hub. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to replace these with Vulcan bearing ceramic yellow seal bearings. Just go ahead, push that in, drop that in, and just press it into place. And just go ahead, there is no shim on the axle. Just go ahead and put the axle back into the assembly. And then we're going to go ahead and reinstall the shim on the axle. We're going to put the pin back in. We're going to put the wheel hex back on in its place, and this is going to kind of pop back on. Once that's done, make sure it spins freely, and we're going to go ahead and reinstall this on the vehicle. All you got to do is make sure, just key the drive shaft, slide that back on. Go put this back on the trailing arm. Put our hinge pin back in. Go ahead and tighten up our hinge pin. We're going to reinstall our upper camber link. You can put a medium grade Loctite on here if you'd like. I'm going to go ahead and apply some myself here. Just put on a little bit on the end of the screw. Go ahead and reinstall the upper camber link bolt and tighten it up. Now we're going to go ahead and put the steering linkage back on. We're going to finger tighten the retaining nut for now. Before we tighten it up, we're going to take our wrench and we're going to put it on the screw and make sure it stays in place before we start tightening up the nut. I've actually Loctited this screw in place, but if you haven't, you might want to. But it's fine just as long as you just hold it in place, tighten it up, and just tighten it all the way down. Now we're going to go ahead and move on to the rear assembly. Just copy this for the other side, you'll be fine. Let's do the rear. I'm going to go ahead and we're going to remove the upper camber link. All tools that I'm using will be in the description below. We're going to go ahead and remove the hinge pin. pull that out. We're going to take our rear hub assembly and just pull it straight out the vehicle. And it's just like the front. We're going to go ahead and take our flathead screwdriver and we're going to pop the hex off. Remove the pin. And we have a shim just like the front. We're going to go ahead and remove the shim. And just pull the axle out. Now the rear axle actually does have a shim on the inner part of the axle. Just make sure you don't lose that. Go ahead and put that back in place when you reassemble. Now the bearings, we're just going to grab one of our wrenches and we're just going to just pop the bearings out of this real quick. Go ahead and reinstall your vulcan bearings. Go ahead, slide your axle back in place, making sure you still have that shim on the axle. Slide it in. Reinstall your shim. Put your pin back into the axle. Go ahead and put the hex on. Pop it back into place. Make sure it spins freely. We're going to go ahead and reinstall this on the vehicle. Just key your axle. Slide that on. We're going to go ahead and line up our hole for the hinge pin. Slide your hinge pin in. Tighten that up. And just like the front, I'm going to go ahead and put a little dab of Loctite on the screw before I put the upper camber link back on. Go ahead and tighten that all the way down. And you're done with this side. Go ahead and repeat that for the other side, and you'll be completely done replacing your hub bearings.